Council for January 9th, 2019. Will the council members introduce themselves from my left?
Dan Haggerty.
Len Harrison.
Dave Olson.
Claire Toutant.
Barbara Mathewson.
It seems like there's
There's an
definitely some
echo.
amplification.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amplified somewhere.
Do you know, is the sound okay, Steve?
Okay. Michelle Weil will not be here tonight. Speaker slips, so you all know, are available out at the front. Yes, Don, you have a report for like the
me?
supervisor? Yes, please.
Oh, sure.
I know you're going to be talking a little bit later, so I don't know if there's.
Okay, just give me, you want me, I could talk about that thing roundabout. I think that's, some of you are really interested in. What happened was that sometime back, as you know, we met with, first of all, with Bijan Sartipi about the roundabout, and later, and he then retired, and we met then with some of the subsequent people. One of the persons, he was just an interim director, and both times they both talked about a cooperative agreement with the county, pretty much like we had at Surfers Beach. However, subsequently, they do have a director now for District 4, and it was it's rather disappointing. Basically, what they're saying is that they we're happy to oversee the site, and you should look for money someplace else, because they're essentially not going to fund it. And I know that Senator Hill was surprised at that as well, because it seemed like we had at least a verbal agreement that we would have a cooperative agreement. So, I mean, I could read it for you, and I think some of the people might be interested. What it says is, first of all the salutations initially about thank you for your letter, and all that. It says Caltrans shares your interest in the safety and mobility improvements on State Route 1 in the county, and currently invests over $30 million from the State Highway Operations and Protection Program for various pavement resurfacing, bridge replacements, storm damage repairs, and safety improvements. Since Caltrans has not identified State Route 1 Cypress location as necessary for intersection improvements and eligibility under the SHOP safety program, Caltrans supports your traffic study efforts and goal of evaluating the installation of a roundabout as part of the local development traffic mitigation requirements. As the Cypress intersection improvement is necessary mitigation for the big wave development, the county should prepare a PSR, I forgot what the acronym is, for a roundabout, and Caltrans would be available to provide oversight. While the SHOP funds are not currently identified, Caltrans will continue to monitor the existing condition and propose any future improvements as part of our 10-year SHOP asset management plan. You should also explore local or regional opportunities with Metropolitan Transportation Commission, City County Association of Governments, San Mateo County Transportation Authority, as well as eligible SB1 competitive programs. So in essence, a nice way of saying that in 10 years from now, maybe they'll look at. So I'll have to go back and meet with them, and again, I think I will bring in Senator Hill to try to resurrect that. What we had originally proposed is that we would do, we would be glad to do the planning. The only problem with us doing the planning is it's really their highway and their standards that we have to adhere to. So we said, you do the plan. What we will do is we'll do the EIR, we'll do the, not eminent domain, but we will purchase any property that needs to be purchased. And then you do the construction. And we had verbal agreement that sounded like a cooperative agreement. It is about we estimate it's about $8.5 million. Could be probably, by the time it's all said, that's probably a $10 million project. And they did pass SB1 recently, and while they indicate $30 million for pavement, that's fine, but that's their responsibility. That's what they have to do on a regular basis to maintain the highway anyway. So we'll go back and see what I could do with Senator Hill and continue to pursue it. I personally think it's I think it's a high profile. Nobody really wants a traffic signal there. At least what I hear loud and clear that people do not want a traffic signal. They want the roundabout. And as an interesting sidelight, I actually talked to three people, probably the three people who were on the board of Resist Density, and we talked about, they certainly are not for this particular project, as you know, in Long Beach, but they were, when we talked about traffic mitigation, I did talk about the roundabout there in California, and while they don't particularly care for my vision of it, I just say that the idea of a roundabout is that really it slows the traffic down without slowing you down from your original, your long-term destination. Yeah, it's better than a traffic signal. It provides safety for pedestrians as well as motorists. And it also has the potential of creating more of a village feeling. Now, they would prefer that people don't know anything about it, but it really does. It really, at least that's my vision. It may not be the community necessarily, or at least their vision, but at least we had a pretty good conversation about that. I also saw that you have something in about dunes, the dunes project. And when I told them that, well, first of all, I was glad that that particular property is not in the county jurisdiction. But I had met with the, developer's representative, and I said, you're never gonna get this thing built. It's not, it just isn't gonna happen. And so they were pretty happy with that. So they said, would I be willing to say that? Yeah, I'd be willing. I'd be happy to say that the Dunes project will never happen. And the reason for that is that, the county's idea about development is that, we don't really want to see big open spaces developed. What we want, or if there's going to be development, it should be infill in existing villages or existing areas where there are already homes. We don't want to see big parcels of land developed. The other thing we know is the Coastside Land Trust has properties that they have been able to pick up over the years through really it's really tax liens. What happens is that oftentimes people, the properties are like 25 foot by 100 lots. Pretty much they were subdivided probably in the 1900s sometime, and they were pretty much developed much like San Francisco lots. And what happens is that the original owner probably passes it down from one generation to the next, and people lose interest in it because they don't think they're ever going to be developing the project, and they stop paying taxes. And when there's a tax sale, an organization like the Coastside Land Trust can claim the property. They don't have to, if it's a regular person who claims it, then they have to pay, the assessed value. If it's a nonprofit like the Coastside Land Trust, all they have to do is pay the back taxes. So they've been picking up lots that block any potential development. So it's not just the county and the city's desire. I'm pretty sure this, don't want to speak for the city, but that's my guess. So that because all these little lots are kind of interspersed, they pretty much block any kind of development anyway. So I really am not, I'm not saying that you shouldn't worry about it. I'm just saying that I just don't think that it has a chance of being developed. The other thing is that we, because of all the fires in the North Bay, we've, and I think I also started thinking about it. I've thought about this for some time about all of the eucalyptus that we have on the coastside, specifically in El Granada. And really concerned about wildland fires. And so one of the projects that I have is we do this cleanup project in Princeton. And I always have the fire service there with me. So I asked John Riddell, who's he's the fire marshal for Coastside Fire. We talked about, what's the possibility of a wildland fire? Or, I think there's a great possibility. What do you think? And he said, well, yeah, in 1917, there was a big fire that started in Pacifica, wiped out Montero, and killed 13 people in El Granada. So we thought, wow, we've already had one. We didn't know about it. So apparently it's in 1917 or 1920, something like that. Apparently you can go back and find it. So our Parks Department, because we control a quarry park, that is an area with, as you know, is heavily wooded with the eucalyptus. And one of the things that we can't say, we can't prevent the fire in there, but what we can do is we can make sure that there are fire breaks so that if there is a fire that we could get on it fairly quickly. So I took a tour with somebody you would know, Deputy Calderon, who now is the Deputy Director of our Parks Department. And we went traipsing all around up in El Granada and looking at areas that we consider to be, pretty much a fire risk. So we're going to actually start doing some vegetation management. And we recently, at the board, authorized the purchase of some additional chippers, basically. And one is called a masticator. And the masticator looks like a little tank, and it actually eats trees. Not the real big ones. And we have no intention you're not going to take the real big ones down. Those are not the really dangerous ones. It's really the smaller trees that can catch fire. The interesting thing about, when you look at all these, obviously the president said that one of the problems with California is poor forest management. He's wrong. Half of the forests in the state of California belong to the federal government. And most of these fires really are not occurring in state or county forests. They're really in those areas where the urban-rural boundaries meet. And the other thing is that, it turns out that, just a quick science fact is trees are 20% water, houses are 2%. And so when houses go up, they burn to the ground. So if you notice, if you look at these sites, you oftentimes see these big fires. You see some of the trees are still standing where the houses are completely down to the concrete. So that's just an interesting small fact. And so one of the things we're going to do in El Granada is meet with some of the residents and talk to them about making their own houses somewhat more resilient. Having basically a clearance with, some of it's going to be really difficult for some people, but having safe spaces around your house so things don't, in other words, you're not providing a lot of fuel right next to your house. The other thing that people should know about, the reason that houses catch on fire isn't that the fire just goes right up to the house necessarily. What happens is that, for example, eucalyptus, it's really kind of an explosive fire, and it'll send off embers. And you probably saw some of those things on television where they were showing these people trying to get out of these roads and the embers flying all over. They apparently can fly embers, burning embers, travel a considerable distance. And what they do, what happens is if you don't have closures on your roof vents, they get into the attic, and that's what starts to fire the house. So you can have a fire-safe roof, but if they get into, you would probably know this best, Dan, is that, being in construction, if your vents, and everybody's got vents, they can let embers in, that's a problem. So we would probably advise people to make sure all your vents have some kind of a screen so that it's not possible for large embers to get in there and start fires into your attic. So we're also going to be able to pass out, probably some community meetings coming up in El Granada. So I'll give you an idea of what the fire department has. There's both a coastside fire as well as CAL FIRE.
I was thinking of maybe putting this on the agenda here at some point.
Well, yeah, maybe not a bad idea to have the fire department come out and talk to you about it as well. Another area, by the way, not just El Granada, but the area that I live in is really at risk as well. So in Emerald Hills, we're close to Edgewood Park. We have lots of downed trees. It's not the downed trees, it's the leaves and the branches that really, those are the things that catch fire, and they end up creating the problem. Now, with the Parks Department, what they'll do is, we do have roads in behind Quarry Park, but a lot of the brush is overgrown. And so we're going to go through, they're going to go through that. We've thought about a couple ways of increasing our capacity. One is to bring in CDC crews or hire people from CAL FIRE. They have these seasonal crews that work for 9 months. The problem with bringing in CAL FIRE crews is if they have a fire, then those crews are gone. So we're kind of looking at different options of either local crews or CDC is basically Department of Corrections, or these seasonal firefighters with CAL FIRE to make sure that our fire breaks are, give us some level of protection. Again, it's not, you can't, it's not going to, they won't prevent the fire. but they could make it easier for us to, or at least our fire service, to be able to get on it and put them out quickly, so that we could avoid some of the catastrophic fires that we've seen in other regions. So that's kind of a,
So in the investigation you did, it sounded like you gave good emphasis to Quarry Park. The
Yeah.
lands out there. Did you look at the avenues, which are also heavily populated with old?
we didn't look at the avenue, no, we didn't look at that. We were looking mostly at Quarry Park. And we might end up having to, there are lots up there that are for sale, we may end up having to do eminent domain. And the reason is that, what happens is, what fire services explained to us, that, well, jurisdictions, cities, counties allow development in areas, and they, ends up, they block the potential for the fire department to be able to get into some of these areas, and a fire breaks. And so we are looking at some of those vacant lots, and we either will purchase them or do eminent domain.
So could CAL FIRE just be asked to comment whether they feel the eucalyptus on the avenues represent a threat?
Yeah, you should ask them, sure.
Okay.
And you were talking to Fire Marshal Liddell, I think you said?
John Liddell? Well, he's one, but Jonathan Cox is the local, well, he's our fire chief. Yours is Ian Larkin, well, no, wait a minute, yours is, Coastside Fire has got Ian Larkin. And the county fire is our fire department, and they're both CAL FIRE, so same. By the way, one of the things that we did in preparation for, with our fire service, so we did add positions over the years, we've been doing that. And then with our Measure A and our Measure K, we actually replaced all of their equipment. So all of the equipment they have is almost brand new. So we've been doing everything we can in terms of beefing up our service it seems like that was kind of a timely thing to do. It's an expensive thing to do. Those fire engines cost something like $600,000. And the ones that are the ladder trucks are about $1.1 million. So we put a lot of money into fire equipment and staffing. And so now we're gonna have to start doing something in terms of the management of areas like Quarry Park, Edgewood Park, up at Skyline as well.
I know we're going to have you on the agenda in a few minutes again, so,
Yeah, just those, it's an interesting,
that is,
it's a timely subject, it's on people's minds now.
Yeah.
we'll probably want to follow up on it.
Yeah.
Harvey, you have some
Question.
for us?
You have a question just for Don, just for a brief? Don, when you're talking about the masticator, the tree eater,
Yeah.
thought came to my mind, that if we're chipping and clearing, what do we do with the, sometimes valuable, tree chips that can potentially be spread locally, to promote possibly native, ground cover that could help with the whole process. You get that flourishing, and then you have less, of the dry leaves, because it just retains the moisture and it gets everything kind of, and I understand that the eucalyptus might not be the greatest, we can consult with some experts, but, whatever good, leftover, tree trimmings
Yeah.
and chipped wood could be utilized to help with the situation. Has there been any,
Yeah, I asked about that, so I said, isn't that fuel? And they said, well, if you do, if you chip and leave it on the ground, it's so low to the ground, yeah, it can smolder, but it's not gonna flame up.
because
So
the moisture just
Yeah,
concentrates
yeah.
underneath,
Yeah,
right?
it's-
And
So
it
it's,
just
it's
helps.
not, it's not considered to be a fire hazard, but it does, it'll hold dirt.
Yeah.
It actually, to some extent, even could prevent some of the, weeds from sprouting as
Exactly,
well.
yeah, so
Harvey, congratulations on your election.
It
You're currently
was not
mayor.
exactly an election, it was a rotation.
It's
Yeah.
it's still an election.
Still, you were formally recognized by your fellow councilman.
Thank you, thank you. I have a couple of items that I think are relevant to Midcoast. Two of them relate to recent planning commission meetings.
Half Moon Bay Planning Commission met in December and approved a CDP for what we call the Highway 1 North project, and I guess you would call it the South project. And that involves a traffic signal at Terrace, a widening of the road to 4 lanes there. That includes the multimodal trail on the east side of Highway 1 from North Main Street to Spindrift for this project, but ultimately that multimodal trail will go all the way to the city limits, and that's going to be a really good thing for the people living on that side of the highway. It's going to be a project that, if it is on schedule, will start in the summer of 2020, so it's not going to happen right away, but the CDP has been approved. There's a lot of back and forth now with Caltrans, and there'll be an opportunity for the public to weigh in on particular aspects of the design beforehand. But that project is finally going forward after many years. And speaking of many years, last night the Planning Commission had a meeting that included talking about the public restroom at the Pillar Point RV Park. That is part of what should have been a CDP for 20 years ago. It's finally getting the attention it deserves. And at least 2 people in this room made public comments. We're very far from deciding exactly where and how the public restroom will look like, but it's going to come back as part of the CDP, and I think that's another amenity that's a long time coming, and we're really looking forward to having that. So if you are interested in that, make sure you come to the Planning Commission meetings, because it's the CDP for that is run by Half Moon Bay. The land itself is owned by the Harbor District, and the leaseor of the RV park, the one who's responsible for right now for the amenities, is Keaton Nearhand. So there's a lot of different players involved in this, and it's a long time coming, but it's worth pursuing, because we really do need a public restroom there. Speaking of Dunes Beach Surf Beach, rumor has it that at the next city council meeting, which is next Tuesday, January 15th, there's going to be a lot of public comment. It's not on the agenda, but rumor has it that a petition that's been signed by many thousands of people opposed to the project are going to be there. So if you yourself have any input on the Surf Beach, Dunes Beach open space project, please come January 15th, 7 p.m., the usual place. And the last thing on my list is we're finally going to have some reciprocity with the Midcoast Community Council and the Half Moon Bay City Council. We're going to have scheduled monthly reports from Claire initially at the city council meetings. And the first one will be a report on February 5th. That's the first city council meeting in February. So if you want to come and boost the flag of Midcoast Community Council, come to that meeting. Again, 7 o'clock, February 5th, at the usual location. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Question?
Questions?
Oh,
Who had a question?
yeah, several people.
Oh, sir?
Well, first of all, so you said the first approval was the stoplight at Terrace,
Yeah.
and then you mentioned Spindrift, so would that be another stoplight? Is that what you?
No, one stoplight.
And you consider that the last stoplight?
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody else?
Yeah, on the stoplight, are you aware that stoplights can be programmed many different ways, and there's sensors in the road that tells what, I want to call it I hope that we get a super intelligent signal system that will not have a red light unless somebody actually needs to use it. And in addition, if there's only one car, that car's in the intersection, it turns yellow fast and then goes back to green. I'm hoping that, has there been discussion about that? How they're programmed and the different, packages available?
Yeah, our traffic engineer is aware of some of these new technologies that can control these traffic signals, so I'm sure it will be explored.
Okay. I'd like to, I guess I can contact him.
Yeah,
to
Ray Rizalvi is there.
Okay, to learn more about what they're
Yeah.
looking at.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Public comment, up to 3 minutes?
I have a report to you from the planning commission, if you're interested.
Oh, government agencies, yes, please.
Yeah, two items. First of all, Valimar Bluff, 4 houses will be on the planning commission agenda on January 23rd. And the other item is, I don't know how many of you have interacted with the Coastal Commission program analyst Renee Ananda over the last 5 or so years, but she is leaving that job and being hired by the county as a new planner. And this coincided with the departure some months ago of Rob Bartoli, sorely missed because he was deeply involved in the Connected Coast side. And obviously Renee, since she knows the county LCP backwards and forwards, will be a great asset on that. So, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any public comment? 3 minutes? Okay. I have a few announcements. First is the vacancy on the council. There will be applications posted by the county within the next couple of days, I would expect. And there'll be, I presume, links to it on the website. And we're looking for some good people to apply. It's a good opportunity to get involved in a variety of issues that are going to be coming up. So if you know anybody good who's interested, Brandon, let them know. On the 30th of January at the Senior Center in Half Moon Bay, there is a senior transportation fair. There's going to be representatives of lots of different groups discussing alternatives for transportation for people who don't drive. There's the one-day homeless count coming up on the 31st. This is a 5-hour commitment with a required training that leads up to it. And people that have done it have really enjoyed it. So if you're interested, I would, probably the easiest way, the contact is extremely long and difficult, but I would Google it. It's a one-day homeless count, and they're still looking for volunteers. There's 2 grant application opportunities, and I would really encourage people to look at these things when they come up because, if you've got a project that you'd like to pursue, you might as well apply. There's one from the County Office of Sustainability. There's grants available to promote recycling, waste reduction, composting, and education about these things. You can get $5,000 for your group, and the application is on their website by the February 4th. And there's also grant applications available from Mid-Penn, not the housing people, the regional open space people, starting in February for similar projects with larger dollar values and presumably larger projects. But both of these are worth looking at if you've got some ideas. And the last thing was just to add to what Harvey says about the petition for Dunes Beach. They are looking for people to attend the meeting if you're interested on the 15th. And they are going to present the petition with lots of names. Any other announcements? Okay. So I guess the next thing is the first agenda item, which is, swearing in of our new council member.
We need to do the consent agenda.
Oh, let's do that. We have on the consent agenda approving the minutes for December 12th. Do I have a
Motion to approve?
motion to
I'll
this?
second.
All in favor? Carries 5-0. And now the swearing in of our new council member, Len Erickson.
I was gonna vote on that, but. Give you a second. Sure. So why don't we do that up there? Raise your right hand and say aye, and state your name, say aye.
Aye. Lynn Erickson,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance
and I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations. Thank you so much. Fill this out and give it back to me. The one records. Oops.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a conversation with Supervisor Horsley about Highway 1 circulation in Moss Beach. And I don't know if we're going to come up with actual action items here, but I'd like to get to the point where we can at least envision what those next actions might be. And you just gave us some information on the roundabout, or roundabouts. And do you have any other things that you'd like to lead off with, or?
No, I think I probably could talk at more greater length on Saturday.
Okay. What about council members? Do you have some things that you'd like to start with?
I know that the Saturday retreat is an opportunity for more open discussion,
Yeah.
but I'd appreciate it if you could summarize, I guess, the movement or the progression from 2014, when MCC was both brought to forward the, what's called the Connected Coastside Study. At that time, the domain of the study was fairly extensive, extending to Halfmoon Bay and over to 280, et cetera. And also what we came to call crossings, left turns, and medians. So both of those were initiated then, and they were done in the context of the safety and mobility studies, which had been completed a couple of years before, along with an action plan. But at that point, and you mentioned roundabouts relative to Cypress, but that was a new concept for the community, so it was fairly open in terms of what should be considered. So consequently, as those two studies were kicked off, you had a crossings project that had no cognizance of actual intersections and how they might affect the environment. So the plan was put forward without that. And then Connect the Coastside has become a very hard project to understand its overall scope, as it's been silent for a couple of years. And really, I don't believe it's an action-oriented project, but it has tended to stall conversations such as the ideas you brought forward about maybe Moss Beach wanted to have additional support for local business or things like that. And there's been no place really for those conversations to occur, I think, in the absence of Connect the Coastside completing. So there's some follow-up questions from that, but is that a fair characterization of where we are now, and it does sort of block certain project efforts?
I think it's you probably know more about it than I do, because I know you were heavily involved in actually getting the initial consultants and were heavily involved in all the planning. So I think it's a fair analysis.
Consequently, you know, The group that supported the initial projects was the Caltrans Organization for Community Planning. And they have an annual cycle of planning. The people that we worked with in the past are no longer there. And I know from discussions a couple of years ago that the question that confronts us, really in the kind of planning and the questions you brought to Caltrans, is when you look at the ideas you were putting forward about beyond Cypress, the rest of Moss Beach, what are the things that could be done, and what's the sense of the community about that?
Okay, well, let me just, this is a really simple term.
Yep.
I think that the Moss Beach project, what they call Cypress Point, has got to do something about traffic. And I'm not a traffic expert, we have to do something. We cannot just build those units in there and just do it. I mean, I'm sure that Midcoast would like to do that, but we're gonna have to require that there be some mitigation. And it's not gonna just be closing off the street or making it into one-way. Somehow we have to come up with a better plan that actually addresses some of those issues. And I think, actually, if I had my druthers, I think a roundabout, that's California, is probably the best solution. You could also do traffic signals and everything, but, I hear, like, Harvey's note, I'm sure he hears too, that people don't like traffic signals, and Dan, I think, it's made it pretty clear as well. But on the other hand, there's an objection to roundabouts too, because it does slow traffic down. I would argue it doesn't get you, I just remember my old Uncle Joe, used to drive down San Jose in San Jose, 20 miles an hour, people would be beeping the horn at him, and he would say, they're not getting there any faster than me. And it's the same thing with the roundabout. It slows you down. Yes, you're not going 55 miles an hour, you got it. But it does offer the opportunity for safe crossings. The only way I've been able to see how to do it is that all this other idea about concrete in the middle of the freeway is not, or the expressway, isn't gonna work. Just because it's too hard to get, the buy-in from Caltrans. So I think that's, I'm not sure that roundabout is the only answer and the only thing, but I think we gotta do that. In my opinion, to make that palatable, you have to do something for that community if you're going to do, put something, some additional housing there. The other thing is that, one of the things that we pushed at the county level, I'm just telling you all this from, so I just may not tell you this on Saturday, or maybe I'll repeat myself.
No.
One of the reasons I supported, actually, that whole Measure W, I hate to be like a tax and spend Democrat, but the idea for that was actually myself and Supervisor Slocum. And we pushed the Samtrans to actually put that on the ballot, and we worked with a whole bunch of other groups of people like Team C, and their seniors, and the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, the Samtrans Board, and the money goes, half of the money goes into public transportation. And the reason I wanted public transportation is not because I think buses are so wonderful, because they're all empty. And it's not only empty, they don't work, our system doesn't work very well. You have good north-south connections with the train and maybe even the buses up and down El Camino, but the rest of it, the east-west, is terrible. And traditional buses like San Francisco is not gonna work because we don't have that kind of density. So what I want them to do with the additional money you're gonna get, now, nothing's gonna start until July, but I want them to have some, look at express buses, and I also want smaller things. Like one of the things that we did at the county for county employees, we have a thing called Chariot. Expensive, it's a smaller bus, you've probably seen some of them on 280 or 101, they're kind of these cute little green buses with writing all over them, and a Chariot, new waves, but they're smaller, you get maybe, I don't know, if it's 10 or 20 people in them. But I don't see people on the coast side, you've got to have express buses. The other thing about people on the coast complain about traffic. Now, I'll tell you, today, I had my granddaughter for the last few days, and so she had to go to school in Berkeley, so I left the house at 7 o'clock, got over to Berkeley, actually it took me 15 minutes. I got to her little school just a little bit before 8 o'clock, and then to come back to San Mateo County, I sat for 50 minutes to get through the Bay Bridge, the toll length. 50 minutes. So the total trip between going from San Mateo County to Berkeley back was 3 hours. You think you got traffic bad here, take a look at it over on the Bayside. It's way, way worse. The other thing about, we think on greenhouse gases, the only way you're gonna get rid of 60% of the greenhouse gases in Central County come from cars. So if you look at all those cars in the morning, they're all single occupancy vehicles on the coast side. So every single one of them are single, well, once in a while, it's a two-person thing. So I think if we can have better bus service, that's express bus service, we've got to get people out of the car. We've got to get them out of single occupancy vehicle. Easy for me to say, I drive around my car all the time, no doubt about it. But I think people go from here to one work site, maybe it's gonna be a little less convenient. Maybe, you don't get to turn your radio on, or if or vegetate or whatever, or you have to talk to somebody you don't wanna talk to. But somehow we gotta get more people into public transportation. And the only way we're gonna do it is if we have some adequate system over here. And I'm not just interested here, by the way, because my district has 150,000 people in it. I've got Atherton, Woodside, Portola Valley, Menlo Park, San Carlos, Redwood City. So we've got traffic issues there too. We gotta do the same thing there. We've gotta get more people out of their cars and got into public transportation. And the only way the public transportation works is it can't be like every 2 blocks it stops. It's gotta be something that takes you from that's where you're at to 1 or 2 destinations where you wanna be. And then at the final destination, you may have to get out and, take an Uber or something, or another connection, but, people, that's the only way to deal with it, with the traffic. Oh, and by the way, the newspaper said that I said that there's nothing you could do about traffic. What he was asking about had to do with weekend traffic. You cannot deal with weekend traffic with buses or carpools, because people are coming here to go to the beach, and they're gonna take their car. There's no way, unless there's a huge turnaround, or somehow people decide, hey, I'm gonna get in the bus and go to the beach. I don't think that's gonna happen. I think you're always stuck because of the fact that you have the best beaches in the Bay Area. I mean, look at, if you go to Marin County, you got 2 beaches, and there's no parking. So, you've got beaches from, even though I grew up in Daly City, Thornton Beach is not the greatest, but Pacifica has beaches, and then you go always down to Santa Cruz. And you can stop at all the beaches. You got good restaurants. So, it's too bad, but I don't think you could fix that. But you can't fix during the week. You can't. There's other things. You could even do a better job with school service. So if somehow, they would say you can't use, buses for school service, but kids do the high school kids use buses all the time. I know that a parent, like I would, if I had I do have, my kids are all grown up now, but when they were kindergartners, I wouldn't have put them in buses and, get off at the right stop. I wouldn't have done that. So I understand parents would do that, but maybe there's something we can do with the school district too. So I think that's the
The question is, right now you have projects that have sort of been stopped.
Yeah.
And those projects prevent any discussion they apparently present discussion like.
I'm gonna make a guarantee.
What's
By
that?
the time I'm done in 4 years, one of those roundabouts is gonna be in.
Okay, well,
Hold me to that.
It's in the minutes.
At the end of my term, if it's not in, you don't have to throw me a party, but if you do, if I got it.
So, when your predecessor was in after 2 terms, he hadn't done any projects that got us safely across the roads here. His effort was to commission the studies that we call the safety and mobility studies.
Yeah, I know.
They presented concept plans. The question I'm asking is, could you, at the start of your 3rd term, open it up so we can look at the planning to do the kind of things you're talking about, let's say, in Long Beach? And right now, it's sort of stuck, that I believe you've been months to do. And that's what I'm looking for.
I don't really want to do that. I found that.
What is it you don't want to do that?
Well, I don't want to open all that up all over again, or have public meetings and stuff. I mean, I don't mind dealing with that, with MCC with that, but I don't want to go through like FB. I mean, I think we'll probably have some public discussion anyway at some point, but I don't want to start studies all over again. I do want, so I want or some of our, I don't know if it's us or whoever's doing the development, I want them to have some real traffic engineers who come up with real solutions. Don't tell me traffic is mitigated, that's BS. I want you to show me that you're gonna have something on the ground, some pavement on the ground.
What's going to do that? I mean,
Huh?
what existing project is going to do that?
I think it's gonna be that Cypress Point, the 70
Okay,
houses.
but you're looking by project, Cypress by itself is an initiative.
Can we
We're
do
talking
this on,
about-
can we do this on Saturday, because I wanna go home.
Okay.
I
No, I'm just
like to
kidding.
think if
I'll give you an
there's
hour to
comments
talk about
from
it.
other council members or from the
Sure.
community, what I'm hoping is that maybe on Saturday, that we get a sense as to how the MCC can help you
Sure.
achieve that.
So I don't mind talking about it, just, I'm looking up,
Or you're just opening it up.
Yeah.
Dan, do you have something there?
Yes, I know that I've heard, people like, in general, roundabout over a traffic light. But when that study or comparison was done, I would like to, know that all of the newer technology, not a 30-year-old traffic signal compared to a roundabout, but with a traffic signal with all of the modern, sensors and abilities to maximize the flow with a light versus a roundabout with the ramifications of the complete slowdown and then potential, backups from that slowdown. So I hope that, through the process that we can actually look at that, both kind of closely and fairly.
And I would comment on that you'll have only to look at the fully upgraded traffic signal 92 and Highway 1, to see how poorly that's worked. It's a tough problem. Upgraded signals aren't going to solve that problem. They just make the signals not as bad as they were, in my opinion.
Well, it's all about how they're programmed, Dave.
No, that's what I'm saying. Coming up with programming that works well is
Can I give you,
a nightmare.
can I give you an example, in the city of Pacifica, we got a grant from the Transportation Authority for $250,000 to have, those upgraded signals. They had to turn it off, it didn't work.
Right.
But what it did is it blocked all the street traffic,
That's the problem, is coming up with a traffic signal solution
Really tough.
is nearly impossible. I would say,
Well, I drive that road every morning and I am very keen on that situation.
I would say, Don, that one thing the community would like to see, or certainly the MCC, and I suspect the community is large, and people I've talked to, is let's finish Connect the Coast side, particularly the build-out limitation portion of it and retiring lots. I think to a certain extent Len is right, is that various bodies we talk to don't see the point of talking about anything else while Connect the Coast side is still going on. So just wrapping that up and being done with it would be a major step, I think.
I agree, well, beyond, my comprehension, why it's taking so, why we get so stuck.
It's
I
a
do like-
glaring lack of, as Dave says, it's hard to move on when there's something that's just
Yeah.
sitting there.
Um,
We put a lot of work into it.
I do really like the idea of express buses, and I have seen those chariots out there.
Good, yeah.
But I don't understand, and can you explain just very briefly, what is the model? Is it something that you sign up online and is there a network of, hey, I gotta get from here to there, and they connect you with these other people and they figure, okay, the least, most convenient, package of people, and they ask you in a questionnaire if you snore or not?
I actually can't explain that, but what I would do, I'll tell you what I would recommend, bring somebody from Samtrans to explain that, because they are looking at those kinds of things.
Great, thank you.
Any comment from the community? So at least we have a few things on the table. I'm sure.
This has.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So there was a discussion, a possibility rumored about maybe there would be a short-term signal at Cypress. and the MCC wrote a letter outlining some preferred short-term, if that was what was going to happen. Was there any discussion on the county end as to that request or anything about that?
I have to go back on this. I don't remember if we, was that just like doing a acceleration lane?
It was that acceleration lane that has been kicking around since the crossing project, plus on Cypress on the west side, designated turn lanes for.
Okay.
That would be important. Anything else? We move on to our next item, which is an overview of what the MCC has done in the last year. And part of the reason to do this is to acknowledge that the MCC actually has been involved in quite a lot. I mean, you come in here every other week and it feels like, okay, we did a few things. But when you look at the whole picture, it's actually pretty impressive. And another reason to look at this is to identify the things that were successful and the things that need follow-up, such as the things we're talking about right now, so that we're aware of where we need to go. And lastly, to inspire the community to consider what its priorities are. You can look at what we've looked at, but the community may have other priorities that they'd like us to take more looks at. So just to put things in perspective, thank you.
Oh, no, wait a minute, I did get back. Len's got to get back.
Can I set over to Don?
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so do we have the first slide here? We did a lot on transportation, and a lot of this we just talked about just now. But there's the roundabouts. The MCC funded consultations for both intersections, Cypress and California. The consultations on California have recently come in, so there's still going to be some work on that. As I believe both of those have been submitted both to the county and to Caltrans, so that will need to be followed up. The Cypress intersection is a short-term improvement. Lisa just addressed. We are waiting to see what action is going to be able to be taken on that, because we don't want to put in a signal on a short-term basis because it'll turn into a long-term basis. Limiting direct highway access, we've mostly been looking at the Chevron station in Moss Beach, the idea being that there's just wide open access to the highway in all directions. And there are a couple other locations in Moss Beach that have similar problems. That has been stalled a bit. We're waiting for a reply from Caltrans on that. Connect the Coast Side and Safety and Mobility Study Action Plan, we just talked about, that's stalled. Parallel Trail, MCC has submitted a letter of support for the southern segment construction funding, and I think that's going to start sometime soon.
We've got about $3.5 million set aside for it. So, yeah, we are hopeful to start in the summer.
And then we've requested that Caltrans help with clearing vegetation from Highway 1 for safety for pedestrians and bicyclists, and so far we've had no reply on that. Next slide. Planning and zoning. The council gets application referrals, some of which we have paid some pretty close attention to, and also pre-application workshops on major projects. Ones that we've looked at this year have been the Valamar Bluff project with 4 houses, and the council's had some major input into modifying that project. At this point, there is a request for no future coastal armoring and conservation easement for rare coastal prairie habitat, and a provision to make sure that the public trail will be moved inward if it needs to be. So there was a public hearing in January, and we also reviewed the changes that they made, which were generally positive. The house on Arbor Lane was recently approved by the Planning Commission. First time ever that the county prohibited any future armoring, although that may need to be tightened up with the Coastal Commission. But there's been a lot of attention to erosion timeline and to the fact that there are 2 areas on that particular lot that are sensitive to erosion and needed extra attention. Harbor Village RV Park, we've requested more easement for view corridor, closer look at traffic impacts and suggestions for appropriate landscaping, and that is in the process of revision and staff review. Cypress Point has been a major issue. You can see what our concerns were there, quite a few, and there are no recent updates on that. The mixed-use project on Highway 1 at Virginia and Moss Beach is, we had a few suggestions on that, and that's currently in revision. We also had some comment on a project that PG&E was doing to clear vegetation over their gas lines along 92, and our concerns focused largely on the riparian habitat that they were proposing to modify, and conditions have been added to that project. Next one. Planning and zoning. We've been requesting that the Chevron Station in Moss Beach work on their landscape buffer, their sidewalking, and their access to Highway 1. This, it says, as it says here, may come to the Planning Commission without these conditions being met.
Does that mean effectively that the request we had was adopted, take to the commission?
I think Lisa may have some comments on that, but probably.
So Dave and I have been working directly with the planner on this, and it seemed from her comments that they were not receptive to what we were asking for. And in addition, when Supervisor Horsley supported our request for limiting highway access in West Moss Beach, we sent the planner a copy of your letter as well. But we don't know. All we know is that it will come to the Planning Commission, and we don't know what the staff report will say. Just have to keep an eye on it.
The Airport Street bulk propane hazard, that was presented to the council, who took a strong position on the fact that there were many small propane tanks being stored next to Pillar Ridge. And most of those, I guess all the smaller tanks have been removed. There's still some focus on the installation as a whole. Planning Commission will deal with that. There was a row of cypress trees planted at 8th and 9th Street in Montera, and that was blocking ocean views. Some of the trees have been removed, but there was still some follow-up needed on part of them, some of the others. Mavericks Event Center had an unpermitted fence, which MCC addressed, and conditions were added for maximum 3-foot landscaping height. San Lucas had a site in Moss Beach, had an unpermitted grading. This has been dealt with the plan and monitoring and conditions being added to the CDP. The top 3 with these asterisks are things that still need to be followed up on. Planning and zoning, there was a request to have planning and zoning changes to have a consistent measurement system for the height of buildings. And this has been postponed indefinitely because the county says they don't have the resources to look at it, which is something interesting. The design review, Coastal Design Review Committee made a presentation to the MCC because they are trying to modify some of their approach. And hopefully we can continue to give comments to them as that progresses. Infrastructure, community resources, a number of things here. Barbara will talk in a minute about our 5-year agreement with Caltrans Connect the Highway project. We have adopted a stretch of Highway 1 in Moss Beach for trash cleanup, and that's going to be interesting. Airport Street parking was quite congested and dangerous for pedestrians and bicyclists. We did request to restrict parking there, and that has been at least partially agreed to. Tsunami hazard zones, we'd like to take another look at that map and hopefully improve the signage. And that is something we have not gotten a reply on. We've had informational presentations by various groups, Sea Level Rise people, Sea Change Initiative, from the Midcoast Water Quality Update from Research Conservation District, from Peninsula Clean Energy, from SAM about the main force main replacement project, and from Seton Coastside Medical Center to request increased community health care. That is kind of up in the air right now since they went bankrupt. But they are looking at other options. Next one. Last slide. We had 3 study sessions, which are memorialized on the website for anybody who needs to look at them, and I would really encourage it because they're valuable. One was an introduction to local government with district boundaries, services, and decision makers. Second was on land use planning and development approval processes. And the third was on transportation planning and projects. Very valuable. We had candidate forums for 4 elections in cooperation with the League of Women Voters. And we also had a joint commendation for the library staff in conjunction with the Half Moon Bay City Council. So I think we've been very busy, and obviously there's things that we haven't been successful at, but we hopefully will continue to pursue most of them, and it gives us a good start for next year. So are there comments or questions about any of these things? Did you want to say something? No.
Just, mostly all volunteer work.
Totally
By
volunteer
community,
work.
by community members.
And hopefully we'll have more involvement from community members as time goes on.
Yes.
That was a great summary. It's hard to remember everything that
Yeah.
we started a year ago, and we did actually achieve some of it.
I think we should be proud of ourselves. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Barbara, you've got your agenda
The
item.
next item, okay. I'm going to talk about the Adopt a Highway project that we're doing. We have a couple of decisions to make. One is our sign that Caltrans wants to put up. I think what we want is midcoastcommunitycouncil.org as opposed to just the Midcoast Community Council. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts about that one way or the other, but I thought the website, people could look it up. I don't know.
That sounds like a good idea, because we always want to draw people to the website.
Yeah.
That sounds fine to me.
The only thought I have,
But I guess the consideration is whether the formal name is important relative to the recognition of the,
Sorry?
you're putting up the midcommunitycouncil.org so people see it
Right.
as a place to go to. So I don't know whether the program has any provision.
They'll let you put darn near anything on the side.
Oh, no, he wants to know what we
Whatever
want on
you
it. He'll
want.
put whatever we want on it.
Do it.
If we want a fancy logo, we have to pay for it and design it, but if we just want a basic
No, I think that.
sign, that's,
Is Dan gonna build the signs? I was at the harbor commission, apparently they were saying that they had to take one of Ed Moran's sign down someplace, and they said, well, the story was that it was put someplace where it was not supposed to be, so the county crews had to take it down, and it was inappropriately taken down. In any case, Ed went to them and said, hey, you guys took my sign down in the wrong location. They said, who built that thing? We had to have a chainsaw to get it down. So apparently you built it.
Yeah,
Yeah, we believed it was on private property, we said. My thought on the sign, is, two things. You know, the .org would take up space, which would give reaction, the ramification would be, the more letters, so it'd be more difficult to read. So the question comes up, you know, how important is the .org? Knowing that, it costs, you know, it would require to make the rest of the letters smaller. Some people have said, you know, if you're gonna type in, those people like Google it in, you know, and you just Google Midcoast Community Council, and then the website comes, you know, it's right there. Or you can go direct. I just, you know, I think we want to maximize. I do get the idea of putting the website. It kind of alerts people, hey, there is a website. Let's check it out. How many people would do that versus just kind of Googling?
If we spell it with capital letters, it's only 2 characters longer, and I think
It'll be 4, right?
No,
The dot.
no,
ORG.
because otherwise you get 2 spaces in between the words. Midcoast space, community council.
Oh, well, the other thing is
That's true.
So it's only 2 it's only 2 characters longer, and I think we
The
just
ease
use
of
capital
reading.
letters,
Yeah.
which works just fine on the web address. I'm fully in
And they-
favor of the web address.
And then, you know, the ease of reading when there's a little bit of space between, you know, to break it up a little bit. When it's all, when they're all letters are crunched together, it's harder to, you know, for the eye to pick up. So, I guess I'm leaning towards thinking that maybe the .org is not necessary, you know, it might take away. But that's my thought.
Can I add my 2 cents?
Sure.
For nickel.
Oddly enough, I think Midcoast Community Council is best. 3 separate words. So when you're driving by, you glance, and I think that the point is that, oh, the Midcoast Community Council's taking care of this section of the road. I think that's, in this case, for me, that's the main takeaway. And like Dan said, you could Google it if you needed to. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
So now what do we have to do, make an agenda item?
No, do you want to make a
I don't-
motion? Or how should we handle that?
I really don't
How
care either
about
way.
bring
I
up a
really
couple
don't.
of samples next time, you know, look
Okay,
at them
we can
both
do
so
that.
you get a feel
Let's
for
look at
it.
it at the retreat. and
Okay,
make a decision.
I'll figure it out and bring it to the retreat.
I don't know if that's a retreat decision.
Well, I mean, because we're not
Well, we
looking.
don't have to make a decision, but we
You can bring it.
I think.
Chew on it.
I think if people are worried about that, we can authorize Barbara to make the decision. And then we can just talk about it at the retreat. But I don't think we need to do that.
See you on.
So, bye, thank
See you
you.
guys.
Thank you.
So
Thanks, Don.
the last part of my spiel is, two more things. We need a co-captain because Chris is no longer on the council. So I need a co-captain. And our next cleanup is scheduled for Tuesday, January 15th in the morning. Lisa and Chris can make it. I don't know if anybody else can, but,
I can.
January
I
15th?
did, because you told me you couldn't do Wednesdays.
Can't
Can't
Couldn't do Wednesday morning, I can't do Tuesday at all.
So is this a cleanup on Tuesday morning?
Yeah. Mhm.
I can-
Oh,
So,
good.
okay. I don't think I could ever make a weekday.
I know. I think we're gonna alternate like a weekend and a
Okay.
during the week type thing, because last time we did it on a Saturday.
This can't be just council members doing, it. We need to get the community involved in
Yeah.
this. Gail's going to do it.
No, you need to find a
Oh,
way to get it.
that's you were going to do it.
Yeah.
Good try.
So anybody has some ideas about how to do that? Possibly a newspaper blurb. But this is, part of the reason to do this is to get
I
the
think-
community involved.
I think we should make a flyer that could be distributed, you know, through the community. You know, maybe certain businesses might be willing to have it on their window, let's say. Post office billboards, you know, that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
just, but probably most important is one-to-one, you know, maybe residents could put a clipboard up in front of their house. As
The only,
proposed.
the only thing about that is that we only have so many setups that I can't have like 10 people showing up when I only have 4
I don't think you're gonna have a
sets.
problem
I
having too
agree with
many
that,
people.
but there's also the issue of the training. They have to go through training and
No, I understand that,
So-
but directing, you know, for the first step, you know, come here, this is the information you need if you want to join, if you want to participate, you know. There's this step first, second step, so that just to, you know, raise the awareness. There's not going to be a lot of people, but there will be some, and we want to find those people in the community.
What I've always had as a model in the back of my mind is you drive in on 92 and it says, big sign saying Wavecrest workday, such and such a time. And apparently people come out and work at Wavecrest based on those signs. This has to be made appealing and people feel like it's worthwhile. You want to limit the number of people to a manageable number.
Right.
So maybe having a sign up ahead of time or something.
But my suggestion is not to have a flyer for one event. The flyer would be to encourage people to kind of join in, understand, you know, how often we'll be doing it, so that they can jump in as the time allows.
So that's going to need a little bit of work to systematize.
God, I thought this would be so easy.
I can help with a flyer.
Okay.
Is next door a useful public?
Yeah, they use
I was
that.
gonna suggest that too, thinking next door might be good, because we could limit it to the Moss Beach community.
Actually, I don't think you do want to limit it to Moss Beach. I think you want to limit it to at most Midcoast.
Yeah.
You
But-
certainly want to include the entire Midcoast.
You could have people private message you if they were interested.
Yeah.
Okay.
Generally, Nextdoor has been moderately efficient at getting things out, especially if you put it in the event section as well as in the general. So you post it in the event section, and then you write a general brief posting pointing to the event section. It seems to be moderately successful. And for what it's worth, going back to the previous, Lisa and everybody else is right, you have to have a much smaller font to get the whole thing on one line. I'm bad.
I'm sorry, what are you?
Whoops.
He supported Lisa's idea.
3 separate words, your idea.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Hi, Artie.
Good night, Harvey.
Thank you for coming. Yeah, I'm kind of leaning that way now too.
That's what I was trying to show.
Yeah, that jumps.
You're right, you end up having to go much smaller font to get it on one line.
Let me see.
Right.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And hopefully, Caltrans will allow for 2 lines, huh? Hopefully.
Oh, they'll go for 2 lines, I think.
I don't think that's a problem, because a lot of them have a couple of lines.
Or maybe even 3 lines, I don't know.
I think 2 is
Whatever-
probably the right way to go. It stands out pretty well. But we'll leave that to Barbara, because she can talk back to Caltrans. We're happy to advise.
I would definitely.
I like this, I like that, I think that looks
Just the
good.
first capital letter being large, you know, sometimes you do that.
You can do that, too.
Have it all capitals with the first letter of each large font.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a certain number of things they can do without charging, and then they start charging because they
Right.
regard it as graphics.
Was there another part?
The co-captain,
What about it?
we need one.
So what would be the, you know, the commitment, or what would be the expected, you know?
Well,
Is that just on record with?
it's on record for Caltrans that one of us would always be with the group, because we have more extensive training
Right.
than just regular pickup. So one of us would always have to be at the cleanup.
Right, but not both at the same time.
Don't have to be, I mean, Chris and I have been doing it together.
Right.
And Chris doesn't want to, or it's not appropriate to have him continue?
I don't think that Chris has a problem staying on. He's not said that. I just thought the council,
I know we did.
I think you did some legal checking
Yeah,
and,
we talked about it, and everybody from the county to Caltrans to the council was fine with Chris staying the co-captain for
Yeah.
now. So if he's
so
willing
if
to
the
keep doing
council's,
it.
if nobody wants it and the council's willing, I'll double check with Chris, but I'm sure he's fine with it because he wants to continue doing it with us.
I
Yeah,
like Chris's energy on this, so if that'll work, I think it'd be great.
yeah, I think leave it.
And just for the record, I do want to, join and participate, but there's always these weekends that are difficult to, but I will be participating.
Yeah. Oh, no, yeah, this is an ongoing thing, yeah, no. Okay.
I can't believe how fast this has gone.
And you're right on time, look at you, you're perfect.
Am I on time? I
Yeah.
thought I was way ahead.
No.
Okay.
We're actually almost exactly on time.
Okay, fine,
Unheard of.
yeah. Any council activity? It's been a long time since we met last time. I don't
It's
even
been the
remember.
holidays, so.
Yeah. Future agendas, Saturday is the administrative retreat. Go ahead.
I don't know if anybody noticed, but the beach house trimmed their trees.
Yeah.
And they did a terrible job.
Mhm.
And they only did the front. So I'm going to the next HOA meeting they have, which is on the 24th, and continue to complain.
Good.
I did not notice, and can you elaborate on the terrible job?
Well,
I mean, was it
they
just
were
like-
supposed to hire a big-name company, and I just saw one guy out there with a pickup truck and a shredder or whatever, and he just chopped the trees. They look awful.
So they look kind of like
Chopped.
butchered,
Yeah, they look butchered.
but
But lower.
significantly trimmed or lightly?
Significantly trimmed
But just kind of in a
in
shabby
a
way?
terrible way, and then they left the ones between Sam's, the few that are there, and then the ones with the RV lot are all untouched. And they were supposed to cut them all.
Let's see, maybe just send a masticator.
Yeah, the masticator.
So you're going to follow up on that?
I'll follow up.
And then January 23rd, there will be a presentation of the draft tree ordinance, which should be tying in with what we talked about today a little bit too. So we are adjourned.
Motion to adjourn. Great.